when a can of Coca-Cola becomes a gardening tool. Hello there, if you're someone who loves gardening, whether you're growing vegetables on your balcony or tending plants in your backyard, then you've likely encountered some familiar problems. Leaf-eating pests, snails munching through your lettuce, weeds sprouting between patio cracks, or rusty gardening tools after a rainy season. And you know what's interesting? The solution to those problems might already be sitting in your fridge. Not a pesticide, not a specialized fertilizer either, but a can of Coca-Cola. That's right. It might sound like a joke, but behind that familiar sweetness and fizz is a cocktail of chemicals powerful enough to make both plants and pests behave differently. From snail trap to compost accelerators, from water removal to soil support, if used correctly, Coca-Cola can become a surprising assistant in your garden. But just like anything in life, too much of it is never good. Used improperly, Coca can turn your garden into a magnet for ants, fungi, and lead to soil imbalance. So, how do you use Coca-Cola properly in gardening? How do you turn this everyday soda into a helpful tool rather than a disaster? In today's extended talk, I'll walk you through 12 chapters, comprehensive, easy to understand, and practical, so you'll clearly know what ingredients in Coca-Cola affect plants and soil, seek effective use that many gardeners swear by, simple DIY formulas with surprisingly great results, real life stories from gardeners across 3 continents, and of course, serious warnings if it's misused. Together, we'll learn, experiment, and be amazed at how something as harmless as Coca-Cola could transform your little garden. Ready? Let's begin with Chapter 1. Chapter 1. What makes Coca-Cola useful in gardening? Coca-Cola wasn't made for watering plants, but if you take a closer look at its ingredients, you'll understand why some gardeners are putting it to use and seeing real results. Here are Coca-Cola's key ingredients and the hidden effects in the garden. Sugar, fructose, glucose, corn syrup. Sugar is a powerful natural base. Insects like snails, ants, bees, and flies are drawn to its smell and sweetness. Meanwhile, in compost piles, sugar feeds beneficial bacteria, speeding up the decomposition of leaves and organic waste. However, if sugar stays in the soil too long, it can attract unwanted fungi and ant colonies. That's why proper doses and timing are essential. Phosphoric acid, a food-grade acid. This is a relatively strong acid. It gives coca a slight tartness, but in the garden, it helps break down rust on tools and can even burn weeds when applied directly. Some gardeners also use it to lower soil pH, making the soil more acidic for acid-loving plants like azaleas or hydrangeas. But this should only be done if you know how to test soil pH and properly dilute the solution. Carbon dioxide, CO2. The fizzy gas CO2 isn't very potent by itself, but when mixed with water, it forms carbonic acid, a mild acid. This can soften plant tissues or temporarily affect microbial activity in the soil. While not a major factor, it still contributes to Coca-Cola's overall effect. In summary, sugar attracts, acid weakens. If used thoughtfully, Coca-Cola can do more for your garden than you'd imagine. Chapter 2. 6 practical uses of Coca-Cola in the garden. Now that you know what's inside Coca-Cola, the question is, what can it actually do in the garden, besides quenching thirst? Here are 6 ways gardeners around the world have used Coca-Cola, from tiny balcony garden to family farm. Each method is simple, requires no fancy tools, and you can try them right in your own backyard. 1. Trap for snakes and slugs. Soft-bodied pests like snails are strongly attracted to sweetness. When you pour a little coca into a plastic lid and place it near your vegetable bed, especially in the evening, you're inviting them to a sugary feast, but the ending is not so sweet. The acid in coca kills them on contact. How to do it? Pour 1 or 2 cups of coca into a yogurt lid or salad dish and place it at the base of your plants. Replace every 2-3 days or after it rains. Do not pour coca directly onto the soil. It can attract ants and fungi. 2. Trap for ants and wasps. Like snails, insects such as wasps and ants love coca. Use this to your advantage by creating a bottle trap. Cut a plastic bottle, pour in some coca, and invert the top to create a deadly funnel. How to do it? Fill 1/3 of the bottle with coca and add a few drops of vinegar to enhance effectiveness. Hang near fruit trees or compost areas. Check regularly and keep away from living spaces. 3. Rust remover for garden tools. After a few rainy seasons or being left outdoors, tools like shovels and pruners start to rust. Instead of buying harsh chemical cleaners or new tools, just reach for a coca. How to do it? Soak the tool in coca for 8-12 hours, depending on rust severity. Then scrub with a wire brush or sandpaper. The acid in coca helps dissolve the rust, making it easy to remove. 4. Weed killer for unwanted grass. For weeds growing in unwanted places, like between patio tiles, coca can help clear them without the use of chemical herbicides. How to do it? Pour a small amount of coca directly at the base of the weed. Do not pour on soil used for growing plants. Coca doesn't know the difference between friend and foe. 5. Compost accelerator. If you have a compost pile made of leaves, veggie scraps, and other organic waste, coca can help feed the microbes and speed up decomposition. How to do it? Pour 1 can of coca over a compost pile about 3 to 5 square meters in size. Mix well and keep the pile moist, especially useful for dry materials like leaves, straw, or cardboard, which normally take longer to break down. 6. Soil pH reducer for acid-loving plants. Some plants, like azaleas, hydrangeas, and blueberries, thrive in acidic soil. If your soil is too alkaline, a diluted coca mixture can help balance it out. How to do it? Mix 1 teaspoon of coca with 1 cup of water and pour it around the base of the plant. Only do this if you've tested your soil's pH. Don't overdo it unless you're sure of the impact. In summary, Coca-Cola can do more in the garden than most people realize, but it must be used wisely and in moderation. Don't even indiscriminately. Don't pour it on edible greens, and definitely don't assume more is better. Let's move on to Chapter 3. Chapter 4. Common mistakes. When using Coca-Cola in the garden and the consequences, here's the truth. Coca-Cola can work wonders when used right, but when used incorrectly, oh dear, you might spend the next week trying to undo the damage. I've seen many gardeners, both beginners and experienced, make the same mistakes when trying Coca-Cola for the first time. Some pour it directly onto vegetables, others soak plants in it as if it were a magical fertilizer, and end up with nothing but bugs, ants, and white mold. So, in this chapter, I'll walk you through the most common mistakes so you don't have to learn the hard way. Mistake 1. Pouring coca on edible veggies to make them sweeter. Sounds familiar? Some people claim if you pour Coke on tomatoes, they'll taste sweeter. But honestly, there's no scientific proof that Coke makes fruit sweeter. In fact, if you pour Coke near leafy greens like lettuce, strawberries, or tomatoes, ants will swarm in. Mold will grow around the base. And if it's humid, the whole bed might rot. Bottom line, coca is not for edible crops. Don't try it. Mistake 2. Using coca instead of water or fertilizer. Some believe Coke is nutrient-rich, so they water plants with it. Others stop using fertilizer altogether and switch to Coke weekly. The result? Soil becomes overly acidic. Beneficial microbes die off, roots suffocate, and plants slowly but surely perish. Coca has no essential nutrients like nitrogen, potassium, or phosphorus. It's not a fertilizer, it's just a supplementary tool, not a magic solution. Mistake 3. Spraying coca directly on leaves. Many fall for this tip floating around online, thinking spraying coca will repel pests or make leaves shiny. But the truth is, leaves get sticky and gummed up, ants and flies show up for the sugar mold, grows and spreads disease. Result? The plant looks worse, not better. Don't do it. Mistake 4. Pouring coca into pots without drainage. This may seem like a small issue, but it leads to big problems. If you pour coke into a pot without drainage holes, the liquid and sugar settle at the bottom. Roots rot from standing moisture. The plant dies before you even notice. Always make sure your soil drains well and only use a tiny amount of coke for very specific purposes. Mistake 5. Overusing, thinking more is better. This is the classic too excited mistake. You see it work once, so next time you use 2 cans, then 3, then daily. But here's what happens. Soil gets extremely acidic, microbial life collapses. The plant can't adapt, like forcing it to drink syrup instead of water. Coca is only effective when used in small doses, in the right place, at the right time. In summary, if you can remember these 5 don'ts, you're already halfway to using Coca-Cola wisely in your garden. Don't pour it on vegetables. Don't replace water or fertilizer with Coke. Don't spray it on leaves. Don't use it in pots without drainage. Don't assume more is better. Treat Coca-Cola like a screwdriver. Use it when needed. But don't try to eat soup with it. It'll cause more harm than good.